100 years ago, when our brothers and sisters were invited to the 1922 Cedar Point, Ohio Convention, they were very excited.
Hi, Rose here. I have a question and I'd like to see what you have to say and answer. Please hear me out to understand why I even have this question. Where is the sense of urgency anymore? Yes, the organization does talk about us being in the final part of the final day. No doubt the final part of the final part of the final day.
Shortly before the last day of the last days.
The thing that attracted me to the Watchtower Society was that they taught that Armageddon was so close that those who were living now would never have to die, but that they could live forever.
I think one of the greatest things that appeals to the people is that we were taught that we could live forever here on the earth, and there would be peace, perfect peace among men and animals. The little children could play with the animals, and there would be no harm or no hurt in all of the earth.
Well, when 1914 came, of course, we had to change our views, just like we had to change the views later.
But the urgency isn't there. We get the talks and information about being prepared for the end. We have our go bags, our car go bags, our preparation pantries. We're reminded to listen to the governing body due to the times we are living. But the urgency isn't there. That's probably because the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society keep extending the end. What do I mean? Well, let's just look at our understanding of the generation that is supposed to see the end, as stated in Matthew 24:34. When I was young, in my teens, we had a completely different view of who that generation of Matthew 24 was. In the late 70s and early 80s, I remember my grandfather telling me that he was part of that generation. See, the understanding at that time was the generation were those who were old enough to understand current events happening during 1914, and that was my grandparents' generation. They were born in the early 1900s and could see and understand what was happening in 1914 when World War I broke out. In the October 15th, 1980 Watchtower, under Questions from Readers, here again we see that the generation were those who saw the catastrophic events that broke forth in connection with World War I in 1914. But that generation who were alive in 1914 were getting older and dying off. So in 1984, we got new understanding, which actually extended the generation out. The new understanding of the generation of Matthew 24 were now not those that were alive and had an understanding of current events in 1914. Now, this generation would be contemporary, those that overlapped those born by 1914, the year World War I broke out. So once again, this extended the time frame for who this generation of Matthew 24 was. As those who were alive in 1914 died, we weren't just looking at them anymore. We were looking at those who overlapped their generation. See how that generation was extended out? But then that overlapping generation started to get old too. Remember, the understanding of the generation always had to do with actual people alive in 1914. But that number was dwindling. So what did the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society do? They changed our understanding of the generation completely, as you see here. Now, the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society moved completely away from the generation being anybody born in 1914. This new generation was a wicked generation. The organization showed by Scripture that this generation apparently refers to the peoples of earth who see the sign of Christ's presence but fail to mend their ways. This generation were just like those of Noah's day, who did not listen to his message of the coming destruction. Again, the time of the end was extended out. We weren't looking to people of a certain age anymore who were dying off. Now, the understanding was generalized to wicked people. I'm not really sure how the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society went from those alive in 1914, being that generation, to just wicked people in general. But all witnesses just accepted that new understanding without question, not realizing that once again the time period was being extended out. But even that understanding was changed. Somehow, as you see here in the 2008 Watchtower, the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society went away from a wicked generation to the anointed generation. It was explained that Jesus said that it was his disciples, soon to be anointed with Holy Spirit, who should be able to draw certain conclusions when they saw all these things occur. So, the generation obviously were Christ's faithful anointed brothers today, the modern day John class, who recognize the sign of Matthew 24 as a flash of lightning and have understood its true meaning. So, we've gone from those alive with an understanding of current events in 1914 to those that overlapped those alive at the time in 1914 and who lived through it, to a wicked generation like that of Noah's day, to now the anointed class. But the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society again changed that understanding in 2010 to those that overlapped the anointed. David Splain gave a talk explaining who the generation of anointed, as was brought out in the February 15th, 2008 Watchtower, was. Splain used Fred France, who died in 1992, as an example. If an anointed person was a contemporary of Fred France, they would be considered part of that overlapping generation. Again, extending the generation out. Okay, another quick review. First, the generation of Matthew 24 were those alive in 1914 old enough to understand current events happening in 1914, such as World War I. Then the generation was changed to those who overlapped those alive in 1914 that saw what happened. Then it was changed to a wicked generation having nothing to do with people alive in 1914, because that generation was dying off. Then it was changed to the anointed generation. Now it's back to an overlapping generation, In other words, those who now claim to be anointed who were born prior to those who died that were alive in 1914. In other words, contemporaries of those alive in 1914. So the generation has once again been extended out. How? David Splain stated that Fred Franz was used as an example of one who was anointed, alive in 1914. Fred Franz died in 1992 at the age of 99. Any who were born by 1992 and now claim to be anointed are that generation. Since there's no rule or understanding of how old someone can be when they are anointed, this generation can go on for another 20 to 30 years. But then another understanding will be needed with another governing body. Just this year in 2023, we've seen 2 new governing body members being added who are younger, as the governing body of 2010 are getting older. As the older governing body get old and die off, new ones have always needed to be added. I was talking to my mom, and she said something to me that felt like a punch to my gut. See, my mom and I would always talk about the end of the system, how close it was, and how important it was that we keep that sense of urgency. We had to remember it could happen tomorrow, not next week, tomorrow. That's the urgency we felt going out in service. This system could end tomorrow, and we needed to let as many as possible know. It was such an important message that we had. My husband's grandfather came into the organization in the 1920s as a Bible student, as they were then called. His grandfather wasn't supposed to get old and die in the system. He too had been part of that generation alive in 1914. His grandfather, just as my grandparents had, honestly believed he would see the end of this system. My husband saw the disappointment in his grandfather's eyes right before he passed away. He died over 30 years ago. Now, my mom and dad are getting old. My mom said something over a year ago that, like I said, felt like a punch to my gut. She said, "Honey, I don't think I'm going to make it in this system. I might have to wake up to you in paradise." I had to leave the room because I started to cry and I couldn't hold back the tears. Mom and I always talked about how the end could be tomorrow. Now, my mom was telling me she didn't think she was going to make it. And not because she's in horrible health. My mom comes up with this energy that amazes me, and she just keeps going. But she's slowing down. Her and my dad are still regular pioneering. They're just on the infirmed list, which I'm so thankful for. But they don't think it's tomorrow anymore. Because of Mom's age, she doesn't think she's going to make it. When I was able to pull myself together, I continued the conversation. I said, "Come on, Mom. You know the end could happen tomorrow." She said, "You're right, it could. I don't feel the urgency anymore, honey." She said, "It's just people don't go out in service like they used to. There's so many days now when there's just a couple of us out." Lately, she's talked about how many times there's only been one car group, and that only has 2 or 3 people. Most people Zoom for service, and there aren't many that do that. I've chatted with others through email or comments, those that have questions and feel like I do. They say the same thing. The urgency isn't there, like my mom is starting to feel. Those that are still in and want to excuse the organization say that we have always believed, we only hoped it came in our lifetime because we don't know the time and hour. No, it's supposed to happen in our lifetime. We're told we're going to walk into the new system with our heads held high, rejoicing. But now, many feel it's just something that we can only hope for that happens in our lifetime. If my mom has lost her urgency, how do others feel? Do you hope it comes someday soon, just maybe not in your lifetime? Or do you feel like you will make it in this system, that it's going to happen any day now? Just not tomorrow, like my mom and I always talked about. That we would be walking into the new system together in her lifetime. Now, since the governing body have become more public, we are literally watching them age and need to be replaced with younger ones. The Watchtower Bible and Tract Society has already appointed 4 new members just in the last 13 years. What do you think their future generation teaching of Matthew 24 will be when those who overlap those living in 1914 start dying off? Please tell me what you think in the comments. Or is it just my mom and I that feel that way about the urgency of the times? I look forward to seeing what you have to say. What's your honest opinion regarding the urgency of the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society's message and hope? Well, hopefully this just gives you something else to think about. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like algorithms. It really does help make it go out to other people. And if you really enjoyed it, please subscribe so that you get notified of future videos. And as always, take care and thank you for watching.
So the events unfolding around us are making clearer than ever that we're living in the final part of the last days, undoubtedly the final part of the final part of the last days, shortly before the last day of the last days.